Early Star Wars games were often hit or miss in regards to quality. The most notable of these early titles was the original 1983 Star Wars arcade game and the 1997 Star Wars X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter. While some of the movie tie-ins performed decently, it's clear that the fans mainly wanted to be able to relive the battles. But a few things would need to happen before fans would finally get the game that they were looking for. In 2002, DICE, a developer that largely developed sports games for parent company EA, released Battlefield 1942. It also turns out that development for Battlefront began in 2002, and this wasn't likely coincidental. DICE took the Team Fortress-style class system and amped up the size of teams and maps, allowing for a more realistic combat feel, as objectives and battle lines were more fluid. This was a successful formula, and slapping a Star Wars skin on top of it might have been enough to sell the game alone. Pandemic wore their influences on their sleeve. The title alone is a nod to Battlefield, however the quality difference between the titles are significant. Not only do we have a first-person perspective, but a third-person perspective as well. Toss in quality vehicles that they likely pulled and enhanced from their previous Star Wars, the Clone Wars game, and Pandemic's roots in RTS games, and we have a blend that surpasses its inspiration. Combat is also better. The maps, with minor exceptions, are well balanced. The only real balancing issue in Battlefront is the anti-tank and anti-aircraft weaponry, and while it can feel lopsided at times, it also makes it feel incredibly rewarding to overcome or outmaneuver enemies. Battlefield 1943 can feel a little bit slower in comparison, as the maps are larger and enemy AI are less aware of your presence. Battlefront is more compact overall, and I can't tell you how many times I got domed by an enemy sniper. Considering that Battlefront is nearly 20 years old, the visuals have aged really well. Better than Battlefield 1942 or even Battlefield 2 in my opinion. Characters look great and varied, the vehicles look like they did in the movies, and there are even first-person perspectives for each vehicle, which is the first for most, if not all, of the ground vehicles. The environments are also great, some being excellent recreations of movie locations, while others are completely new to the game. These all hold up visually, with the minor exception of some of the skyboxes when you zoom in on them. The music of John Williams is solid as always, but muted in my gameplay due to copyright. When you do have the music on, it does typically blend into the sound of laser fire, but this only usually happens when the fighting gets tough. The guns sound great, and mostly differ depending on what faction you play as. The voice work is also great, as the story missions are narrated pre-mission, and the battle commands are also voiced. Tamora Morrison reprises his role as the clones, and even the Wookiee will gargle commands. However, the only female character in the game is also the only mute character, leading to awkward situations where people will crowd around you after a button press, rather than you feeling like you're actually issuing a command. Compared to modern titles, gameplay is a little clunky. Infantry on infantry combat is solid. There are a variety of weapons and roles that you can fill. You can play this game how you want, but my favorite experience is to dive headfirst into close quarter tunnels on either of the Bespin maps or on Renvar Harbor. This combat is tense, as battle lines shoot up a storm while grenades and rockets fly, but the flexibility of classes allows you to engage in combat how you want. Land vehicles also handle well. ATSTs and ATATs are slow but can take a beating, while speeders are nimble and will likely have you collide at high speed into a tree. Ground troops are also relatively well balanced to help counter tanks, as the Rebel Alliance, while having weaker vehicles, have better rocket launchers, while the CIS and Republic are on more equal footing, so the CIS have marginally weaker launchers in exchange for wrist rockets on the super battle droids. However, air vehicles are the weakest aspect on the PC port. You can tell that handling was designed for ball mouses or joysticks, as even with the sensitivity all the way up, turning around an aircraft will require you lifting your mouse repeatedly. Ground troops also don't have much in regards to anti-air, causing Naboo planes to be a slaughtering house if the rebels have a half-decent pilot on their side. While this was likely implemented to counter the strong Empire armor, it's near impossible to win as the Empire on this map if my brother gets control of that X-Wing. Battlefront's story is fairly bare bones. There is a Clone War and Civil War campaign, which do offer some unique units that can only be played in those respective modes. The story, however, is a basic rundown of the movies as you swap sides throughout the missions. I would argue that the main story is the Galactic Conquest mode. This mode allows you to play 2 scenarios per faction. These scenarios will start you off with controlling various planets that each provide with unique abilities that you can use in battle. While still combat focused, Galactic Conquest adds a strategic element as you decide what planets to neutralize to stop your opponent from using that ability. It can lead to epic back and forth struggles that other modes just don't capture. So after all that, how well does the original Star Wars Battlefront do on the Ace scale? Being nearly 20 years old means that Battlefront isn't very accessible. There is no subtitled spoken dialogue, and while difficulty can be eased in the settings, the way the vehicles handle might be a little bit more limiting, especially to those who have limb mobility issues. The freedom to rebind controls is always a plus, and while you can on mouse and keyboard, you are stuck to the controller layout unless you use an external software. I think that mentioning that there is no voice work for the female character is appropriate here, as she is the earliest female representative that I can think of in a mainstream shooter game. Not providing her with dialogue can not only alienate fans, but with sheer laziness at best. Battlefront is available digitally on Steam, GOG, and Origin. It's also available physically for the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. While you might need to download a legacy graphics driver, depending on your GPU, the settings and graphics options will be adequate for most modern players. I honestly can't say that I've ever encountered a bug in this game, but I do know of one clipping problem on Bespin platforms, where one of the tunnels is hovering slightly above the platform below, but this is hardly noticeable and it won't affect gameplay. Visuals and combat are still 2 of Battlefront's strongest assets. Playing Galactic Conquest can lead to some insanely tense back and forth gameplay, especially when playing with someone. The fact that the PC version has no split screen is a huge disappointment. The fact that Galactic Conquest isn't available via online or LAN is an even worse crime. Instant action is great, and while you can't use most of the planetary bonuses you can in Galactic Conquest, you can turn on the heroes function in the settings, which will spawn a near immortal force user to your respective sides of battle. The act of killing one of these heroes is arguably more rewarding than winning the match, given how difficult, if not impossible, it is to kill one of these force users, depending on the map. So, don't play to avoid meh, decent, or must play. Where does Star Wars Battlefront fall? Decent. Growing up, Battlefront was one of my favorite games to play with my brothers. I will blatantly admit that I have rose-tinted glasses for this game, but I do think that parts of this game objectively hold up well. Everything from the visuals to the combat are excellent. However, Battlefront's accessibility falls flat, likely pushing it to a meh on the PC version. While it does look and run better on the PC version, I would honestly play this one on one of the consoles, because split screen is a must play in my book. Thus, splitting the difference to a decent and blatantly admitting that this game probably isn't as good as I remember. But either way, I love it, and I hope you loved this video. If you didn't, let me know. I'm open to suggestions. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe check out one of the videos up here. Either way, I'll see you there. Bye.